How would you define imposter syndrome? The feeling that like you don't belong here or you don't have the skills to
Well,
experience success.
I would say like that that I or don't belong. That even though you are doing your best, like people are so much better. I mean, I see it for myself, and I've been in the industry for 17 years now, and
Yeah.
when I go online and you see all these typefaces, and I'm so amazed by their work or
Yeah.
even the podcasts and everything. And it seems like, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. Even though, I have a huge career and
Yeah.
17 years is a huge time. Do you feel that ever?
I mean, I definitely feel it. And, the thing you mentioning it and like speaking to so many creatives about this over the years, the one thing I will say is that like literally everybody experiences it. And I actually think that it is part of, if you're pursuing excellence or if you're in this world where you're creating beautiful, useful things, it's only natural to compare because you're aiming towards something good. You want to bring good things into the world, and so you want that from yourself. And it only takes like perspective to shift that.
Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, I'm going off script with, well, one of the most amazing artists I've researched, met online. She's doing so many different things, and she has so many clients, and if I would start reading all those now, it would be like half an hour reading. So let's just welcome together Gemma. Gemma, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. A very warm introduction. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. I mean, I was doing the research and I've seen so many names, so many big companies, so many different things that you did. It's not really common for a graphic designer, for a designer, now artist, to have that many different things. What led you to explore all these things?
Well, it's a very good question, but I think my path has always been very intuitive. So, initially I studied law and then I dropped out and fell in love with design and typography and graphics. And that was the starting point for
Yeah.
me, which then slowly morphed into fine art practice. So then I had the design and typography and the art, and then more recently incorporating more research and science and philosophy with some studies in neuroaesthetics, and all that on a background of my other passions and loves like movement and running and um, sunshine and a joyous life
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, yeah. You are currently in Sydney, or?
I am currently in Sydney after about a year and a half in London. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen it's London, but I assume it seems a bit dark over there. So, because
Well,
of the time
funnily
difference.
enough, it's winter now, and we have like this. We've had this stream of London weather, so it's been very grey and
Oh,
rainy for the past 2 weeks. So, hunkering down and trying to get things done.
yeah, yeah. I can only imagine. I hate that kind of weather, so I can imagine.
You're a sun
Um,
baby as well, then. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Madrid is, well, not at the moment, but it's like during the day it's 35 degrees Celsius and it's so warm and so sunny. So it's really good.
Jealous. Very
Yeah.
jealous.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Yesterday I was talking to a great designer from the UK, and he also said like it's horrible, it's raining all the time and everything. And I was like 35 degrees outside, so it's perfect.
Love it.
Yeah. You mentioned running, and honestly, you are the first artist, designer who has a public Strava profile on their website listed, which is which was so unusual for me. I was looking at the icons and everything, and I was like, you go Instagram and LinkedIn, and then I saw, is this Strava? Like, how did that and why?
Well, firstly, I love it that you noticed that and mentioned it. I guess there was a point maybe 3 or 4 years ago where I was, thinking about, we have these online versions of ourselves and platforms where we publish,
Yeah,
and we obviously have to choose which ones we publish on unless we want to be across everything. And I thought, well, what are the ones that I just actually use the most and are close to my core identity? And it was, Instagram for art and design and publishing that part of my life, LinkedIn for the more professional side. And then I was like, well, Strava is actually a huge part of me. And actually, during the pandemic, and at a point where I had a bit of Instagram fatigue, where I wanted to experiment more with my art practice, I actually used Strava as a way to share like more behind the scenes about my art. Not many people would know it or follow it.
yeah.
Um, and so I thought, well, this just makes sense to me. Plus, I started, running to art galleries, and there was this real merging of like what it was. And so I figured I'm just going to put it out there. And if it connects with people, then it's true to me. So that's why it's there.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was super cool. And I saw it and I was like, wow, you don't really expect that. You would think maybe, I don't know, for video makers to have a TikTok or I don't know, some other links, but it was so cool to see that. I assume it's also connected to your preparations for marathons and things like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, so there was a point where I was training for, I've done 2 marathons. I'm not a fast marathon runner. I would say my peak distance, my favorite distance is probably more like a 10K. But
Okay.
I do share, there have been periods where I've shared my like training journeys or like this shift between ultra running and ultra artist, and I'd write more like diary style entries, and I actually also teach spin classes, so there's like a whole category of like cycling and spin stuff in there as well.
Yeah, I mean that's super cool. But your journey into art world started with one of the, well, in 2008, that was like you got 200,000 views on YouTube, which was, I assume, really, really huge because YouTube back then was not what it is right now. For the, how would you say it, performance, right now, right here.
Yes,
And I know you called it cringe and you called yourself an idiot back then. Your words, not mine.
I'll take it.
But yeah, what would you say to that Gemma right now?
I think I was probably a little bit harsh saying it was cringe. Like, if I think back to that version of me as a 20-year-old art student, like I was truly just trying to explore the field and express myself and take in influences. And the funny thing about that video is I published it on YouTube at a time when the concept of something going viral or being shared like was not yet familiar to me. It was
Yeah.
pre-Instagram, and I actually just did that so that the tutor in my design course could access it to market, so I
Oh,
wouldn't have
wow.
to upload the video like or send it a big file. And so it was this weird moment where a university project was like in the public domain, and it really like transformed my life because it was that video that prompted a German design blog to write about my work, to invite me to speak in Berlin. At this like very young age, I was catapulted into this world, almost by accident or just through sheer experimentation. And I think I still use that approach today, but the world is just a different place. So
Yeah.
I have,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I've maybe moved beyond the cringe phase, and I have a little
Okay.
bit more respect for young Gemma.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Well, would you recommend that? I mean, not doing the same thing, but experimenting a lot to younger designers right now.
Yeah, look, I think at the heart of it, I was using the tools that were available to me at the time and just using them to express what I was exploring. So today, the tools might be different. Obviously, everyone can make videos and edit really quickly and at a younger age. But at the core is like, what are you exploring or expressing? And I think I would 100% encourage that, especially because there are so many different ways to do it now. So you can really find what flavor suits you. And I think the antidote to like fear of new technology and fear of change is to play and try and see what comes out of it.
Okay, okay. And what are you experimenting on right now?
Good question. I would say, I mean, like, I can't deny that I'm experimenting with AI. I would say in unlikely ways, like I'm not, it, it's become very seamless in my process where I still work the same way, where I do a lot of things by hand. I sketch in pencil, I come up with ideas, I switch between analog and digital. And then every now and then a little moment will arrive where I'll find myself using like a large language model or one of the AI systems to make a quick change or cross-check an idea or copy edit a concept description that I'm about to send to a client. Like little small things that I might have otherwise deliberated on or ruminated on or got stuck in a loop on, I use it as a back and forth. So that's probably the biggest form. But then other things
Okay.
like experimenting with theories and ideas and like my whole practice now, I've been working for 15, 20 years, like seeing how all these random threads come together and being able to look back at the patterns, trying to like not introduce anything new, but like bring together the pillars of calligraphy and typography and drawing and painting and philosophy and thought together as one. Um, so it's a pretty amorphous phase that I'm in right now.
Okay. Okay. A lot of flows and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. What was also interesting to me is that when you were well young, you went to university, but you dropped out, and then like 2 3 years ago, you went back for a
Mm-hmm.
very well. I wouldn't say completely different from what you do, but you know, it was different at that stage. Why? Why did that happen? What pulled you towards university again?
Well, it came at this moment where I'd basically been living the artist's life in my studio in Redfern for 5 years. So just before COVID, I moved into my dream studio. It was where I was going to experiment with painting on big walls. I bought my own scissor lift. I'd checked off all of these career goals of like a Times Square billboard and um, a museum acquisition. Like all of these dreams came true. And I felt as though I didn't have a plan beyond like achieving this success.
Okay.
And so in this period in my studio, I had this amazing luxury of like independent thought and reflection and experimentation. But as my lease came to an end, there was this point where I was like, well, what am I missing? And I realized I was missing, I'd done the artist time, the work on myself, but I was missing the connection to the real world again. And I needed growth, but I didn't know what that looked like. I knew I wanted to use my brain more and be more challenged by ideas. And so I became obsessed with like the neuroscience and psychology of art and design and thinking bigger picture about evolution, why we make art, all these questions. And so I discovered this course. It was in London or America in neuroaesthetics. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. It was a very like, I would say it was a long time coming, but the decision was on a whim. And so off I went. And so it was just time and place. And it was definitely challenging. Like I say that I like to learn the hard way because, you mentioned it was a bit of a sidestep. It was neuroscience and psychology and statistics, things that I didn't have any background in. And I went in
Okay.
quite confidently, and it was very painful to one, be a student again, be in a new city, learning these new concepts. But it was really amazing and very enriching. So no regrets.
Oh, that's really good. I mean, it's always, with those new things, especially as we grow older, it gets way harder to accept new things, I think, and to experiment more. So, yeah, I can imagine how, a bit frightening probably it was like to move just like that and to start university and everything, right?
Definitely. I mean, my ego was like, I had to keep it in check because, one day I was like speaking at a big design conference in Brazil in front of thousands of people. And then the next day I was in a small group assignment with like three other students presenting to like this
Wow.
group and getting marked. And it was great. Like I loved it, but, it was good. I really am glad that I did it because to go back and even just be in that kind of learning environment after 10 plus years of studying, like so much has changed. So it was really good to do that and just to see what comes out of it. And I still don't know, there's a lot of, I know it's changed me and it's changed so many aspects of how I work and think, but I think the long-term impact is still to be revealed.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting. It's a really cool connection. It's definitely something new, and after so many years working, and you people need, like new stimulants and new things to explore. So I really love that. But as you said, from a very early age in your career, you got invitations to speak at conferences starting in Berlin and then all over the world. You've even been in Spain a couple of times, I've seen, and
Mhm.
how do you like Spain, by the way?
Oh, I love Spain. I've been to Barcelona many times and Madrid. I think, is that all? I really,
Valencia, I
oh my
think.
gosh, Valencia is one of my favorite cities. My
Okay.
gosh. Yeah, I love Spain. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And how do you, I mean, you got used to it by now, to speak at all these events, and there's so many of them. Also, I could read them for like half an hour. But do you still perhaps have kind of a fear before going on stage, or is that way more natural by now?
I'm so glad that you asked that because for the longest time, I didn't have fear. Like from the beginning, probably from 21 to 35, I I think I really thrived. Like I get nervous and excited, but it would fuel my preparation and I'd have like the excitement of a new city and it would really propel me to be relaxed on stage. And once I started talking, it was not my biggest fear. But in the last few years, I've started to notice the day before a different kind of feeling.
Okay.
And I spoke at a conference in Freiburg and I knew the feeling was coming. So the day before, I'm like, I'm just going to hike up a mountain to distract myself. I do all these weird
Yeah.
methods. And I think what it is the same reason I went to go and study was this sense that I was almost bored of myself. Like, even though people who were hearing my story, it was new, I wanted to feel fresh on stage. Like I was still excited by the ideas that I was sharing. And, um, so that's part of the reason why I went to gather more information. So I have something that I can share with people that feels richer and deeper than just my own personal experience. And I'm currently writing a new talk that I will preview in July and then in Berlin in August. So it will be a good experiment to see if the nerves go away or if they
Yeah,
change
yeah.
as I start to share this new talk. So yeah, but I've heard all sorts of stories of speakers before
Okay.
being sick before they go on stage, taking beta blockers, like all of the myriad of things, because I mean, standing in front of an audience can be a pretty intimidating thing. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, for me, anxiety comes even before recording a podcast. So,
Oh, are you
yeah, I
okay
can
now,
I
Alan?
can
Is it okay?
imagine. No, I'm fine.
Okay,
When I
good.
start speaking, when we start recording, it's all good. But before that, there's so much anxiety and everything. But now
Yeah.
it's really good. Yeah, yeah.
Do
So
you have
I
like a
can only.
pre-interview ritual of any kind?
No, not really. No, I mean, I just well, since it was the early morning, it's like 9:20 at the moment in Madrid, and I got up at 8, which is quite unusual to get up so early. But since you were, because of the time difference, it's completely normal. I had breakfast and coffee and just chatted a bit with my husband, and then, entered here and see what's going on, and went through my notes quickly. And I do go through notes, but I assume it's not kind of a ritual. It's kind of
Yeah.
normal thing, yeah. So yeah, that's it. Nothing different. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, the public speaking seems really interesting to me as well, but I assume I would be so frozen before, and I don't know, might even, try and apply for some things to see how it works and where the brain leads me and how does it end? Who knows?
Yeah.
That would be really cool. Also, what I wanted to ask you is, before you started doing all these different art things, your love for typography and for lettering was like one of the main things you did. And where did it come from? Like, expressly for the lettering and for typography. It really interesting to me because I'm a type designer behind the podcast,
Mm.
besides the podcast, and so that really is an interesting thing to me.
Well, I've actually thought about it a lot because it was a very intense passion. Like at the time, when I started a blog, it was 2007. Um, there was a few things that happened. It was the shift from law to design. So I was already excited to be in a creative space after feeling really restrained. I was in a new city. I'd moved to Sydney. I'd grown up in a very natural environment around like curiously looking for plants and flowers. And then suddenly I'm in this new city. I'm learning about typography and I'm surrounded by signs. I became a letterpress printer. I was an apprentice letterpress printer at my university. I had a teacher who was really passionate about typography. And it was like, I think all of these things at once, plus just a deep love of language and words. My family are kind of word people, not big readers or literature, but just words.
Yeah.
And I think that just fueled this obsession. And then because I was such like I loved to draw, I was looking at fonts, I was looking at signage, and then I was filling sketchbooks with lettering and listening to songs and lyrics, and it was just all of these things happening at once. And the world of typography felt very like new, and I didn't know anyone else that was really into it. It was just like this place that I could go into, and I was obsessed with the history and like learning about fonts, and it was just an amalgamation of all of these things at once. Um, yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to two things you said. First is growing up in a very natural part of Australia. It was
Mm.
in Manglorious,
Mount
a
Glorious.
small
Yeah.
town in rainforest, right?
Yeah. Just outside of Brisbane.
Okay, okay. How do you think that I mean, there's when you go through your Instagram and through your work, there's a lot of, these flower details and everything. So I assume it influenced you quite a lot, right?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and my dad knows the name of every single plant there is. You point to it and he'll tell you
Wow.
what it is. And so I think that came from him. And my mum is definitely more of a language word person. So I think there was those influences, but also, they're kind of like flowers and plants are the natural alphabet of the natural world. And I see like depending on the environment, if I'm always looking for things, you put me in a rainforest and I'll find a flower, and you put me in a city and I'll look at the words. I think it's more the curiosity and the looking and the searching that drove the interest. And I also like
Okay.
the idea that it's like a merging of like the human, you know, the human world and the natural world, and like letters are our tools to communicate, and we can shape them and change them and make them beautiful, or make change the feeling of them based on what we want to say. And I don't know, maybe I'm projecting onto nature, but it feels like I like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
compare and combine them.
No, I love that. I mean, I'm not like your dad. I don't know the name of every plant, but I have so many of them. Even now, looking at the balconies, it's like, well, almost a forest out there in each one of them. And it's, I'm kind of obsessed with that part. So I love that. And I love those references and, interaction between the plants and flowers and the topography, which is really, really cool to me. Um, but you went very quickly. I have a feeling those things, everything in your career, like grew exponentially
Mm,
all the time. Somehow that was the feeling while I was researching. You did that first piece for university, then a year later or the same year you spoke on a conference, and then everything else,
mm.
even some of your artworks have been acquired by museums, and it's such a huge thing. But which one of those artworks would you pick right now if you had to? Like, this is the best I did.
Mm.
Is
I
it
mean, it
even
often
possible?
comes back to it's always my gallery shows that I love the most, because to me they feel like the truest expressions of the moment where I was, and a desire to push my craft. Um, so like I did a series of exhibitions at China Heights Gallery. There was one which was the Big Heaven mural, the Joy mural. There's a series of black and white pieces. There's one at the Museum of Art and Design in Atlanta that says "You are here." And then my Laguna exhibition in California back in 2017, which was all black and white typography. So I think those installations, those are probably the things that feel I have the strongest connection to. Partly also because none of them exist anymore, like they were all temporary,
Okay.
which was the intention, and they all feel like the most me. As a, obviously we're all influenced by so many things, but at least the memory of creating those particular pieces was this merging of ideas I was inspired by, or philosophical things I was thinking about. Um, and then the way that they came out, painted by hand with teams of people in these short periods of time. I don't know, that I still want to pick up on the thread of where I've left off. Like that's what it feels like I'm going to continue over time, even though I do so many other things in between.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things. And one of the biggest ones was the billboards in your Times Square for during the pandemic, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
How did it come to that? I've seen, you say thank you to so many different artists in the caption of the post, including Jessica Heish and everyone else. And how did it come to working on that piece?
The Times Square billboard piece, they commissioned a series of artists, and it was actually through Debbie Millman and Print Magazine. I think they were commissioning a small group of artists, and so I'd worked with her on the Museum of Art and Design text-based exhibition. It was a really quick turnaround. I mean, I remember in COVID, it was this heightened state, and so I was building out the design of the billboard based on the other work that I'd done for the exhibition. So that was how it happened. And it was, yeah, it was really a really amazing opportunity and an important message as well at the time.
Yes, yes, absolutely. How was COVID for you? How did it go through? I know Australia was completely locked for 2 years. Even
Mhm.
people coming in was not possible. How did you personally went through it?
Look, I think there's two sides to it. In some ways, it was this amazing, like almost like a period of forced isolation where we actually did not have a huge impact of the like pandemic of people getting sick. We were kind of in this bubble. So in that period, I had this very unique experience of like being in the studio, not traveling. I was working on an exhibition. I was able to reflect. I was able to work slowly, be in nature, connect with friends and family. Like it was this real like utopian moment. But then the other side of that was I think Australia was a little bit delayed, and then like getting back into the world when things started happening. A lot of my work did involve me traveling to paint. So there was like an after effect of like slowing down in the kinds of work I was doing right at the moment when momentum had been building like for a long time in my career. So it was, but I know that this is an experience of everybody. So it was a blessing and a curse in many ways, but I think ultimately it did provide this moment of reflection that really shaped everything that came after that. And yeah.
Okay. And you also, I think when the pandemic started, you asked your managers and representatives not have any client work for like 3 months, right?
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes do this, especially when I've got exhibitions. I'm like, no commercial work, because I like feel like I need to just, the nature of the design world. It's like commissions can come, you can be so busy, you have to say no to everything, and the next day you've got nothing. So I was always living this unpredictable state of not knowing what projects would come in. But I think sometimes when I work towards a big piece, I need to know that I've got like the safety of no interruptions. But
Okay.
funnily enough, what usually happens is after that isolated creative period by myself, I'm like, oh my God, please, I would love to collaborate.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do love, working with clients, and it's a different kind of creativity. And I think I've actually grown to love it more and more the older that I've gotten because, it's like another mind that you're working with and a different
Yeah,
vision
yeah.
and an outside point of view. So I like to have both. And I'm very
Okay.
grateful to all my different agents at various stages who've like, even when I was doing my sabbatical in science in London, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And they're like, all right, off you go. And lots of love and support. So yeah, I appreciate all the people I work with.
I am jumping from these topics, like one of the university, then the work and everything, because there are so many things about you, so many things I want to ask you, and the time is always limited, especially since you've done so many things. But um, what does a flow state look like to you? Like, how do you feel in your studio? When does it come? How does it,
Mm.
work?
Yeah. Well, if I think back to the most memorable flow experiences, part of it is that it is like a forgetting of yourself. You're fully absorbed, you feel at one with what you're doing, that you almost lose sense of time and you forget yourself and you become one with what you're doing. For me, it usually comes about by surprise when I've reached a point in the creative process where like maybe a number of the initial steps have been done. So I've been sketching, and I'm painting, but there's still like that right balance of challenge that you can't like completely zone out. Like sometimes I'll paint murals and the design's done and I'm just filling in the outlines, and that I can listen to an audiobook and kind of disengage. But it's in those moments where like you're actively figuring something out. So maybe like painting a gradient, painting something I've never painted before, or doing life drawing where I'm observing a model and I'm trying to represent it accurately, and it requires looking and translating and drawing, and you have to be like really in it. So you're really there's that effortlessness, but you're still engaged. So it might happen if I'm designing a poster or doing a painting, but it's different to when you're scrolling on your phone and you're
Yeah.
completely escaping, but you don't
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like you have like a sense of agency or control. And a lot of the like writings about it describe it so beautifully as this like cascading of like learning or like doing better than you expected. And it's almost like it could be seen as a positive, like flourishing state. Um, Even just the other night, like I don't know if I was in flow state, but it was the first time in a long time where I stayed up really late into the night. I was drawing these letter forms for a calligraphy project I'm working on, and I was just sitting there drawing like it's just with a pencil, and it was really simple. Um, but there was something about it that felt the closest in a long time to being actively, I don't know, really engaged with it. There were no distractions. That's another thing. Like, if you get distracted, it can interrupt that. And I think that feeling of being focused now is so sought after because it's just so easy to be distracted that
Yeah.
you've got to create the conditions for it to like come about naturally. And that may be more challenging than we know.
Okay. Oh, that's quite interesting. And based on that, what you said, do you ever feel bored doing what you do? Like, do you have
Yeah.
maybe client projects that are not so stimulating, maybe something else?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. And I think, a few years ago when I had this like, moment of like figuring out uh, like what was the next phase of my career and what I needed to be stimulated. I think I was quite unaccepting of the boring parts of my job, and I was a bit like, and I'm like this is supposed to be my passion. Like everything should be fun, and it's but the reality is to live a creative life is such a luxury. So to have things like liaising with clients and emails and doing admin, or even in the creative process itself, like round one of coming up with an idea, I'm very actively engaged because it's open, you're seeking inspiration, you're coming up with sketches and mock-ups, you're sharing it. Then there's like the in-between phase where it's often like small tweaks or color changes, and those bits can be boring. And so yes, it's 100% a part of it, but I think I've made peace with that and just know that that's everything in life. If it was all sunshine and daisies, you wouldn't have any contrast.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah, yeah.
really getting good at those boring parts or like finding ways to do them is like part of the creative expertise. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do see it, and there is, as you said, especially the admin work and paperwork and all the things. It's not always interesting. Well, most of the time it's not interesting, but we have
Yeah.
to do it, and it's
Yeah.
it's a part of the job. Is that one of the reasons why you work on so many different things?
Yeah, I think it's possible. As I said before, like when I'm studying, I find it easier then to shift back to creative work because, I mean, even just using different parts of my body, like I'm a very bodily person when I think about my practice. It's part of the reason I started doing murals. But I noticed that, like, if I were to get into like a real block of creative work that was very heavily computer focused. Like it was just ergonomically like one thing. So if I could get outside and read an article, then I would be able to walk and sit in the park and read a paper or do admin on my computer or at a park bench and then come back and paint or maybe do calligraphy. And it was the shifting between all of these different things that allowed me to feel like very physically alive and not to get bored and stagnant and to also really focus on the thing that I'm doing at the time. Because what I also started to realize was that it's very easy to get lost in a design process that's not quite flow state, but could just be like tinkering with no real progression.
Yeah, yeah.
And that by putting a time pressure, whether it was like a 45-minute or 90-minute window, actually allowed me to do really precise work, come up with a solution, and then come back with fresh eyes and not overcook something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a working strategy. But I see other artists who just hone in on one thing, and there's a part of me that's like, oh, what if I just did that? But I know my personality now, and I do love to have like a harmony of things happening at once. So I'm going to continue down this path and see where it goes. But I'm definitely not introducing anything new for a while. I think I've got a lot to juggle and to just bring them all
Okay.
up together as one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, from what I've seen online, and sometimes you cannot really believe what you read online because there's so much AI, so many AI things. But at this moment, you are working on a couple of different things. You are
Mm-hmm.
preparing an exhibition for the
Mm-hmm.
next year. You
Yes.
have a couple of talks on
Mm-hmm.
conferences. Also, I've read your own wallpaper
Mm-hmm.
collection. Is that correct,
Yeah.
right? How do you, well, you just talked about it, but how do you manage to go from all those things, and to work actively on all of them?
Well, I think it's because the time scale is quite long, I work on them all, but they all feed into each other. So like for example, the wallpaper collection is like directly inspired by like my years of doing like large scale wall paintings. And I've got so many elements that I've drawn and created over time that this is something that kind of hums along in the background. The talks are a way to, bring together the research and reflect on my story and practice. And then the exhibition, this for me is like the real holy grail of my practice where I'm picking up like a really conceptual idea. Like I want to paint words from the inside out and like start to, that's the experimental part where there's the most unknowns. But as I said before, if I only do that, then I lose the commercial work that fuels my art practice or
Yeah.
the speaking, which keeps me connected to community. And so I think it's about maintaining all of those things as one. Um, so yeah.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it makes sense to work that way and to keep it in that kind of a flow. Um, I do have a couple of more, questions. I will not keep you for too long.
That's okay.
So I also wanted to ask if you could pick one advice for a very young Gemma, 8, 10-year-old Gemma, that you would give to her from this perspective.
Oh, like from me right now to 8-year-old Gemma.
Yes, yes. It doesn't have to be about work, so feel free
Okay.
to.
Oh my God. I would just say keep going and keep doing what you're doing. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's really good. So I assume um you have no regrets about your career, no things you would like change or remove if you could.
I mean, I think there's definitely, I mean, I'm a human being. There's so many like emotions that I've experienced in my career. And, if you'd asked me that question about 8-year-old Gemma 4 years ago, my answer would have been different. I think it's funny. I actually had this moment when I left my dream studio before I went to London, and I really, really grieved like that because it was just such a huge part of me. It was like an extension of all of my favorite parts of my life and self. And um, I had this dream one night when I was in London that little Gemma, like the Gemma that would make these little books and probably around the
Okay.
age of like 6 to 8, came to the studio and saw it. And it was like,
Oh
I'm
wow.
almost getting goosebumps like when I think about it now because I actually don't remember many of my dreams anymore. But when I do, they're always very significant. And so that was like this real moment of like, wow, like you
Yeah,
you
that's
live
huge.
this life. So um
Wow.
I'd say I definitely would say I don't have any regrets, but that's only as a result of like processing different emotions of realizations that sometimes you make decisions about your career and your life and at that moment you don't know what the impact is. I mean, you can make a plan and you can imagine based on your experience, but really like there's so many things that are outside of your control. or different paths you could take. You know, there's moments where I'm like, well, what if I did choose art instead of design when I switched from law? And what would my life look like if I was just purely a fine artist? But I think you can imagine that in different ways, but you're only where you are now because of the things that you made. And you can only then move towards the things that you want to do or how you want your life to be next. And so that's where I'm at. Like, I doesn't mean I don't experience like pangs of like um envy when I say see other artists who've taken a different path, or you know, it's definitely, I still get those things. Like, it's still part of being a human.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, okay. You've mentioned envy, and that kind of connects to my next question. Do you still have, I mean, after all these years, not saying like 50 or whatever, but after all these really great works and such a impressive career, do you still have the imposter syndrome?
How would you define imposter syndrome? The feeling that like you don't belong here or you don't have the skills to
Well,
experience success.
I would say like that you, I mean, that I or don't belong, that even though you are doing your best, like people are so much better. I mean, I see it for myself, and I've been in the industry for 17 years now, and
Yeah.
when I go online and you see all these typefaces, and I'm so amazed by their work, or
Yeah.
even the podcasts and everything, and it seems like, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. Even though, I have a huge career and
Yeah.
17 years is a huge time. Do you feel that ever?
I mean, I definitely feel it. And, you know, the thing you mentioning it and like speaking to so many creatives about this over the years, the one thing I will say is that like literally everybody experiences it. And I actually think that it is part of, you know, if you're pursuing excellence or if you're in this world where you're creating beautiful, useful things, it's only natural to compare because you're aiming towards something good. You want to bring good things into the world, and so you want that from yourself. And it only takes like perspective to shift that. But if you don't have that feeling of either envy or comparison, like that kind of shows you that you still have your creative spirit alive, even if it comes out in a negative way. Because it's that discomfort that maybe propels you to either keep on making things or um, even I think a lot about competition because especially when the internet exploded and we were able to see via Instagram, like, you know, once upon a time you could be in a bubble of where you
Yeah.
were and who you were working with, and you'd only compare yourself to your immediate people. Then suddenly you can see the best of the best all around the world, people coming from different backgrounds with different resources, with different conditions. And like, I think you have to understand those, like, you can only do what you can with where you are and who you are, and making peace with that and having your own set of criteria for success is something that always has helped. Um, but that I think at the heart of it, there's something like alive about having those feelings. And that we are very critical. Like, I think that creative people, I mean, maybe everyone is, but the idea of imposter syndrome, I don't know, it's an interesting one. And the only
Okay.
way that I've gotten out of it is like, even, you know, hearing you describe my career back to me, like I literally forget sometimes. I'm like, I
Yeah.
forget the things I do. Like it takes like looking through an old journal. I'm like, oh, that's right. I designed that. Or someone's like, yeah, you
Yeah,
did this
yeah.
thing for me. And so it's nice to be surrounded by other people that can reflect back to you and see your creations and celebrate them with you. And I think that's where community comes into it, and real life interactions with other artists, sharing studios with people. And yeah, it doesn't mean that there won't be bad feelings, but putting it in
Yeah, yeah.
perspective helps. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um back to communities, you just mentioned that. Do you think that this digital age and AI and everything will make us actually go back to communities even more, to hang out more, to create more like with other people directly, create more with hands?
Mm.
What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I hope so. I do think that maybe it's already starting to happen, and but also maybe that all of these things can coexist. You know, I know so many creatives that love to hibernate and get so much of their work done in isolation and then come and interact with communities. And then other people that really need to be in a studio environment with others to thrive. So I think that human contact is so important, like, and coming together is so important, but that it doesn't have to be the only way, and that we can use the tools. And, you know, if I think of Instagram, for example, you know, there was a point where I became too disconnected from real world interactions. And it was through like reconnecting with working by hand and printing out things and speaking at conferences and really engaging like the real life component that like gave me life again. But then I was disconnected from this like online community I'd shared with for so long. So when I came back into it, I realized I'm like, well, it's just about finding the way that these tools work for you. And like, it's a tool that can connect me with people all around the world. And if I travel to a new city, I'm like, well, these artists are there. So it's like all of these things can coexist is where my head's at with it.
Oh, that's really, really interesting view. You know, you either meet people who hate social media or absolutely love social media. So this kind of, you know, perspective is not so common, but it's quite good. You know, it's quite interesting. I will not keep you for much longer.
It's okay.
Uh, yeah, just one more question for now. I mean, there's so many things I could ask you because of such a huge career, and especially because of your studies and everything that you have so many different, you know, points of view of entering the art and everything. But if you would have to delete, I don't know, all your work, everything you did, could you pick one thing you would actually want to stay, you know, alive?
That's such a good question. So you destroy everything and you're left with one
Destroy
connection.
everything and just leave one thing.
Wow. Hmm. You know, it's going to be such a corny answer, but so what the word that I've been most commissioned to write in like calligraphy or in like illustrated type is love. And so I don't actually think it would be I don't think it would be one of my artworks. I think it would be like the underlying like idea of the power of words. That would be
Oh,
that would
wow.
be want to be my legacy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you have such a different view on things. I mean, this is so good. I absolutely love it. Yeah, and thank you for that. Thank you for such an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time, even though it's so late at night over there. And we've been trying to organize this for so long
We did
because,
it.
yeah, I mean, the construction works, they have been banging. I don't know if you've heard,
I
but
haven't heard, but I know what it's like when there's loud
yeah,
noises,
yeah,
so good on you for getting through
it's a
it.
nightmare. I think almost 2 months now, and it's God, I hope they will finish soon. But yeah, I want to thank you once again for your time, for the insights, and for everything. And I definitely hope we either continue this in another session or maybe in person on some of the conferences. You never know.
Absolutely. Well, Alan, I'm going to be in Europe in August, so if I can make a trip to Spain, I would love to
Yeah,
do the
that would
rest
be
over
absolutely
coffee. So
amazing.
let's
Yeah,
stay
cross
connected.
fingers. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gemma. Have a lovely evening
Thanks,
and bye bye,
Alan.
everyone.